there we go.
Just kidding.
Hey, Facebook, what's going on? It's Paul Maharry, Jake Reuse and Dave McMahon, UGAsports.com, DawgDial live at Champy's Chicken here on Baxter Street. There's still plenty of time to come join us.
We looking okay on the box over there, John? Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for coming in. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure if you have questions that you're sending them our way. We'll be taking them throughout the show as we go through our segments and kind of addressing everything. So, but as always, we want to say thanks to Champy's Chicken for having us here. Josh and Amy Collins, always gracious hosts. Just had some tamales myself.
Ooh, I'm about to eat tamales in another hour when we get done with this show.
Maurice Carter says, hello, guys. Hey, Maurice, can you hear us all right?
If you can hear us, please give us a thumbs up.
Yeah,
let us know. Let us get something coming across here. Volume's low? Okay.
Let's see. Maurice, what do you hear on your end over there? You're in with us, or anybody else for that matter.
If you can hear us, let us know.
Let us know what's going on. I know we're not the best-looking gentlemen, but we just want to make sure you can hear us. You don't have to look at us.
Loud and clear, says Armand Rashad. All right, sounds good.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to get started. We're going to discuss Georgia Tech game. I know that a lot of people don't want to
stay with us for that.
Yeah. We are going to discuss that game in its entirety. Oh man, we're dropping like flies already. Just kidding, guys. But no, stay with us. We're going to talk about that, and then we're also going to dive into recruiting. We've got a new segment. We're going to be calling it Ring the Bell, and it's going to basically be about different position groups and what recruits can come in and help. So that's going to be cool. We're going to lead that all the way up to signing day.
And that's huge. I mean, right now there's a little bit of talk, about the bowl game, but everything right now, for most of the fans, is all about recruiting.
Oh yeah. Once the season stops,
and this guy knows recruiting better than.
Don't tell me that.
Okay, this guy knows.
Give me a break.
This guy right here knows it.
Yeah.
Let me enjoy my moments while I can.
It's going to be a packed show, guys, and we're going to talk about as much recruiting as possible. Sean Burgess says, "What's up, guys? What's going on, Sean? Thanks for hollering at us, man. Stay with us." Maurice says, "Hey, I saw today that Lane Kiffin was interested in the OC job at UGA." I don't know about that. I think he's got a pretty nice gig.
Like we said, though, make sure you're sending your questions in. We'll be taking them each segment and addressing everything. And if you want to come over to Champy's and have a adult beverage with us, we will be here for that, too.
Jay Jim says, starring 3 homeless men. I just got my hair cut. I try to look nice. Who's the next commit? Call it. You know what, Brent? We'll do that in the show. How about that?
Yeah, I'm down.
We'll do that in the show.
I'll take your challenge, Brent.
Yeah, we'll do
Ring
that.
the bell.
Ooh, ring the bell. I like it. We're going to get started, guys. And Jeff Vining says D'Angelo Gibbs, where are we at with him? We're going to touch that. We're definitely going to touch that. Says the live video has been paused. There we go. You're all good. All right, guys. We're going to get the show started. Stay with us. And 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of DawgDial, the show where we talk about University of Georgia football, basketball, recruiting, and much, much more. I'm your host, Paul Maharry, joined by my trusty co-hosts, Dave McMahon and Jake Reuse of UGAsports.com, and we are at Champy's Chicken on Baxter Street here in Athens, where the food is amazing and the drinks never run dry. Jake,
Yeah, sure.
let's put it on Do Not Disturb.
It's the lottery officials.
All right, we're back. We are back.
Yeah, if you just don't mind, Paul, starting the show back.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Sorry about that interruption, folks. Let us know if you can still hear us. We did make a couple of changes there to the audio. I got all these people trying to call me. They're blowing me up.
I know, blowing you up. Hey,
Maybe it's D'Angelo Gibbs.
I hope so. That would be.
I would
probably stop the show if it was.
All right, guys, we're going to do it right now. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of DawgDial, the show where we talk about the University of Georgia football, basketball, recruiting, and much, much more. I'm your host, Paul Maharry, joined by my trusty co-host, Dave McMahon, and Jake Reuse of UGAsports.com. We're at Champy's Chicken on Baxter Street here in Athens, Georgia, where the food is amazing and the drinks never run dry. Jake, Hate Week is now long gone, but Dog fans will remember this one for a while, and not in a good way. What's your initial thoughts on the Bulldogs' 28-27 loss to Georgia Tech?
You know, definitely a tragedy, I think, for the Bulldogs in the regular season like that, especially given the recent successes they've had against the Yellow Jackets. Kirby Smart cannot be happy about starting his tenure off with a loss to the Bugs of North Avenue, but I hope it motivates these guys moving forward.
It's going to have to. 7-5, regular season's over. We're going to discuss that. Folks, we've also got another great show lined up. We're going to recap all the action surrounding the Georgia Tech game. Also, now that the regular season is over, recruiting season is in full effect. We're going to break down who could come in and help the Dogs right away. We're going to take a quick break. Make sure to stay with us. We've got a great show for you this week. You're listening to DawgDial, presented by UGAsports.com. All
right, Sean says he's having a hard time hearing us. Okay. We're working on our volume issues. This is the beauty of live streaming here.
Yes.
You get to watch it all unfold as we do.
Master producer / repairman general. Taking care of everything right now.
Looking spectacular in the Warby Parker glasses.
Jack, I mean, you're talking about a smoothly dressed guy here.
Oh yeah. I mean, really 4-star talent, 5-star talent right here.
Red is one of the chosen colors, so good job on that part.
He's doing his part.
Probably a lot better. Audio.
Check.
Sounds like we've got great audio.
There we go.
All right, guys, give us a thumbs up.
Matt Garman says much better.
Send us something. Yeah, if you can hear us, just shoot us something through there. And
Mitch Davis says, what UGA lineman could go play on the defensive line? That right now, I think that's not your biggest problem. I think your defensive line's fine.
All right, we got some hearts coming through.
Yes.
Like we said, give us a thumbs up if you can hear us. We want to make sure the audio is good for you guys. It'll be good for radio. Big and loud. That's what I like to hear from Mark Thompson. Thank you, Mark. It's we're going to be big and loud for the rest of the show.
I wonder if it's the Mitch Davis that played ball for Georgia.
You think so?
I don't know.
Nope.
Unless he has his friends up on the page, which is possible.
Sure.
Mitch Davis was a force back in the early 90s for Georgia, big-time sack master, number 58.
All right, guys, let's get it going.
All right. Sorry about those technical difficulties. We want to make sure that you guys get the best experience on Facebook Live. Make sure you share this video with your Bulldog friends and also give us a thumbs up, give us a heart. Let us know that you can hear us. But thanks for tuning in all the same. And we want to make sure that you guys are taken care of, as well as our loyal listeners over on DawgDial.
And, guys, make sure to send in your questions. We're going to go heavy recruiting. We're going to talk about this Georgia Tech game for a little while, guys. We got it for a 7-minute?
Yep.
Or 12.
You're the guy. I don't know. Man.
Yeah.
That's not my gig. I just talk. You're the
Here
time
we go.
guy.
3, 2, 1. And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Maharry, joined by my co-hosts, Jake Reuse and Dave McMahon of UGAsports.com. And, guys, we touched on the show open a little bit. Georgia lost to Georgia Tech, heartbreaking fashion. Dave just rewatched the game. And, Dave, I'm going to bring you in early.
Okay.
It was a loss of epic.
Yeah,
I don't even know what do you call it?
It was terrible. It was. Earlier in the season, when Georgia fans were trying to predict what the record would be, a lot of fans had 8-4, which is pretty close to what Georgia finished. But they did not. Getting the way they got there is not the way they got it. And two of the victories they got this year, or two of the victories that they thought were going to be victories, were losses. The Vanderbilt game is painful, and the Georgia Tech game is very painful. Yes, Florida game is always painful, but a lot of Georgia fans kind of maybe thought that. But losing to Vanderbilt and losing to Georgia Tech is just awful. And when I quickly look at it, the last time that happened, both teams lost. Georgia lost to both of those teams was 1961. and prior to that was 56, and prior to that was 1893, which is the first time they played those two teams. So it's been quite a while for those two to happen. And I mean, Georgia did not play horribly, in my opinion. I mean, they just had horrible moments at times. I mean, only 4 times Georgia's defense allowed drives of over 26 yards, and guess what? All 4 of those were touchdowns. And Georgia allowed 4 touchdowns anytime Tech threatened. Anytime that Georgia threatened, they got 3 touchdowns, they got 2 field goals, and they got a missed field goal. So Georgia Tech made the most of their opportunities, and Georgia did not. And that's what basically this whole season's been all about.
And, Jake, I want to bring you in on that. It wasn't that Georgia, I think, played terrible. I think there were some moments in there that you could really look at and say, you know, I think that they had this game won all the way up until midway through the fourth. But it was the end, and it was kind of accumulation of the whole season. You know, it was the ending. And the season's finally over now. I'm sure a lot of Georgia fans are extremely happy that the season is finally done and they can move on to maybe, you know, the recruiting season, which might be a little better for them. But just what were your thoughts? I know you were at the game. You were covering the game. You watched it happen live. It just seemed like it happened so fast.
Yeah, maybe it did if you were watching it at home.
Yeah.
But I think in the stadium, there was a sense of dread that kind of fell over everyone. I'd say probably midway through the third quarter. You know, once Georgia kind of started getting stymied and you know, it's running into some of those hiccups, people realized this thing wasn't as in hand as they thought it was. And given that they'd dealt with a similar result 2 years ago in Sanford Stadium, you know, those nerves were still there.
Oh, yeah.
People remembered that very, very well. The energy was palpable, and I thought. And, you know, it just wasn't a sure thing. It wasn't in the bag in anyone's mind. Starting, like I said, about midway through that third quarter, I think people started probably having a little bit of concern when Georgia got conservative there at the end of the second and heading into halftime, knowing Georgia Tech was going to get the ball back. You know, why didn't they take a shot? You know, I understand you give them some field position, you put them in a spot to maybe get up on you going into the half, but I think that this is a rivalry where you've got to take your shots when you get them. There's no reason that they couldn't have put a couple of passes in the air, get downfield, see what you can do with it. I know it wasn't much time left, but hey, that's the nature of the game, and that's how it plays out. And you know that you got to take those shots, like I said.
I think when I was watching it again, I saw that they were trying to run that ball, and then they went for the interception. Obviously, Georgia Tech got the interception right there at the end. That's the biggest play call I think everybody's talking about right now.
And that came out right after a timeout, too.
Correct.
So, Kirby Smart was not happy the way Georgia was lined up, and you could see him yelling on the sideline. And then the first play right after that was the interception. Now, be it was off a deflection, but the pass wasn't good, the blocking wasn't good, and then it was an interception. And, I mean, and that turned around the game. I mean, I'm always scared of a 13-point lead just because of a turnover. One thing could happen, and the game could be turned around like that, and it proved to be right.
I think the biggest thing there, though, there was a lot of time left on the clock, and it was almost like you could sense Georgia was playing not to lose instead of to win.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And that's, I think, where that sense of dread came from so many people, was this idea of, like, is Georgia going to finish this thing out, or are they just going to keep hanging around and trying to maintain? You know, are they going to put it on the throat? You know, it's one of those things that Mark Richt, I think, was sometimes accused of, idea that he wasn't finishing teams off necessarily. And in this respect, I think that this was probably the biggest, most glaring instance of Kirby Smart sort of falling into that same trap.
In the beginning of Mark Richt's career, it was always finish the drill was when was keep on pounding to Georgia, and then towards the end of Richt's career, you saw that slowly going away, and it looks like this first season with Kirby, it was. I mean, that's how you lose all those 2-point games, 1-point games, and I mean, Georgia hasn't lost 2 1-point games in the season since '67, and they lost 2 of them this year.
Well, and you know, the thing about it is you were losing in such tight fashion all year, and you felt like Georgia had to really try to put this one away because they found themselves in this situation so many times throughout the course of the season. And, you know, it was a toss-up whether or not they were going to end up pulling it out.
You know, guys, and I think, like you said, toss-up, the whole season was kind of a toss-up. You know, when you look at it and the wins that they got, even some of the wins that they got were toss-ups. Losses were obviously, some of them were toss-ups, and I think that's what got a lot of Georgia fans frustrated. Obviously, the whole debate about, well, Mark Richt could have won this many or he could have won that many. That's over. It's done.
Sure.
That you can't go back to Mark Richt. He's gone. He's at Miami. You wish him all the best and you move forward. Now you have to move forward with Kirby Smart. You saw what he did in his first year. It's going to take a little more. I think Kirby Smart had a lot of excitement around him when he came to the program. I think a lot of people are kind of backing away from that. I wouldn't say that they're not backing. They're still backing Kirby Smart, but they're kind of more optimistic now after watching that Georgia Tech game, wouldn't you say?
More optimistic?
Or, excuse me, less optimistic.
I was about to say, yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that when he lost to I'll say this. Nichols kind of started it. Vandy lost, really capped it off. Tennessee was a heartbreaker. That could have gone either way. But this one, the honeymoon's over. Yeah. Period. No questions asked. I mean, I think it was over after the Vanderbilt loss, but this one really put a cap on the whole thing. I think it was a big black mark on the season for so many fans.
And Georgia fans are still waiting for one complete game. Not even against the.
Going to have to wait till next year, Dave.
Yeah. Bowl game. Come on.
We're going to wrap this up. We're going to go into next segment talking about Kirby Smart and how his first season went. You're listening to DawgDial, presented by UGASports.com.
All right. Thanks a lot, Facebook, for sticking with us. Make sure, like we said, you're sending your questions in. Share the video. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know all our audio's good.
Matt Garman says, could you argue Mo Smith was the MVP this season for the Dogs? Imagine if Kirby didn't bring him over from Bama.
I mean, I do think that you if he had not brought him over for Bama, I think it would be a lot more dire situation, perhaps. I do think that. But I don't know that I'd go so far as to name him the MVP. Mo had his own struggles. He came up with some huge plays. Don't get me wrong. He did some great things. But I think that he was a guy who sort of had his own struggles. The MVP debate, though, was a very good one, and probably one we should have.
Oh, let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're going to talk kind of about Kirby Smart, though, this segment, guys, and where he can go from here.
Sounds good.
3, 2, 1. And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm Paul Maharry. Jake Reuse and Dave McMahon of UGA Sports join me here. Champy's Chicken on Baxter Street in Athens, Georgia. Guys, make sure to stop by, get you a 40, a foul, and some good friends to come with you. You'll have a great time, just like we are. And Jake, last segment we weren't having such a great time. We were talking about the struggles of the Georgia Bulldogs. I know a lot of listeners didn't want to hear that. Now let's kind of talk about Kirby Smart. His first season's over. I've been waiting for this segment for a long time, and I think it's kind of all come to fruition now. And Georgia's 7-5. They're heading into a bowl game that could get you excited. It's nice that they have the extra 15 practices and maybe get those freshmen a little bit more involved. But let's just say what it is. It was a down season. Expectations were extremely high, maybe a little too high for a first-year head coach. But what was your take on it? Let's spark a debate on it.
Overall, I thought that they underperformed. I mean, there's really not two ways about it, in my opinion. Did I take everything into account? Yes. My initial season projection was probably about 8-4, so they were only slightly under that. But the fashion that you lost some of those games was really what was concerning to me, and really some of your wins too. Some of the ways you won those games. All wins are good wins, of course, but when you're barely eking them out against a Nicholls State, or you're getting absolutely throttled by what ended up being a pretty subpar Ole Miss team down the stretch. I mean, don't get me wrong, they were hot at the time, but clearly they lacked down the road. Those are the things that worry me. Those are the things that concern me. I think that year one for Kirby raises a lot more question marks than it does give people hope for the future. I mean, there's really not a doubt in my mind about that. He had a lot of struggles to overcome, and I know that that's been harped upon endlessly. The offensive line, God bless him, it was patchwork in the biggest sense of the word. Tyler Catalina was out there taking reps, doing what he could, but I've said before, I maintain he is a freshman into the SEC sense. But I think that
live TV.
I think that he's a guy who. It grew over the course of the year. He got a little bit better. And I think that overall you've got, I don't know, it was, like Dave said, I think in the last segment, and that's what really stood out to me, Georgia never put together one complete game over the course of the entire season. I never had one game where I saw them and I was like, yes, the defense was hitting on all cylinders. Yes, the offense was hitting on all cylinders. Yes, the special teams was hitting on all cylinders. The coaching was there. The timeouts were right. The clock management was great. It just wasn't there even once, and that's got to be a big concern in my opinion.
Dave, what were your thoughts on the season, and not so much maybe the season, but Kirby Smart in general? What's your takeaway from his first season? A lot of expectations for him to come in and do the job, and I think a lot of people got onto him in a bad way, I think, in the sense that they thought he was going to come in and save this team.
I mean, a lot of that stuff is kind of unrealistic, I think. I mean, it is very difficult to be right the wrongs right away.
Oh, yeah.
And I think just because where he came from, and A, Georgia, obviously, but B, under Nick Saban, that everyone thought, it could turn around a lot quicker. And, I mean, Georgia's, last few head coaches have not been that great to start off with. I mean, Rick was 8-4 back in 2001. Jim Donnan was under 500 his first year. Ray Goff was 500. But the second years to the last two prior was really good. Like I said, from 9-6 in 1996, Georgia was 5-6, and the following year they were 10-2 and then that was for Jim Donnan, and for Mark Richt went from 8-4 to their 13-1 season from 2001 to 2002. Ray Goff did not do as well prior to that, so you can't go back super far. But the last two that Georgia's done, year two, has been major improvements. And I think what I liked was a lot of the freshmen that were starting to go well. And that was the people that improved. And I think if they continue, it looks good for next year.
I'm going to tell you, I don't feel the same way. If you're talking about in terms of next year, because my big concern is this offensive line.
Ooh,
I think that
boy.
you can go backward on this offensive line.
Yeah.
There may be a point next year where people are dying to get the 2016 Georgia offensive line back together. For all their struggles and things like that, you just don't know who's going to inherit those positions next, and that's got to be a huge concern. You're losing three starters off the top. You don't really have, that right guard spot and even the left guard spot. The guard spots were kind of up for grabs all season. You saw Lamont Galliard run through there. Solomon Kinley took a couple of snaps. Dyshawn Sims played well at times when he had to be called upon. But it was all patchwork. Like I said, it was a situation where they didn't really have the answers, and I don't think that you have any clearer answers moving into 2017.
I agree with you for the most part. The thing that I'm scared about, and I'm scared about for every position, is the tackle spot. I mean, you mentioned guards, but it's the tackle spot more than anything else that scares me. And, is there a recruit that could start from day one? You don't really want to trust a true freshman being in that position. Or is there a transfer or a graduate that could take the spot? It's scary because we've seen what it did this year. I mean, people overall were not happy about Catalina. He made some big plays here and there, but as a whole, it wasn't as great as a lot of fans would hope for. So I agree with you but I think every other position except for the tackles, which is a huge position, I think it's on the up and up.
I think we're going to touch on that in one of our next segments, which we're going to be calling Ring the Bell. We're going to be talking about the offensive line. I'm glad you brought that up, Dave, because that kind of brings us into that. But I want to kind of get back to Kirby Smart once more, and the simple fact that people thought he was going to be able to come in, and Dave mentioned it, and change his program around. I think right now, and this might be a hot take, the program's regressed. Would you agree with that?
I mean, you're talking about a consistent 8, 9, 10 win thing.
Correct.
At this point. He comes in, and now you're at 7. You can only muster 7 wins. And it's the thing about it is, if you're talking about Mark Richt, he didn't lose much to Vanderbilt. He didn't lose much to Georgia Tech.
Correct.
He won the games that counted for the most part. Now, did he screw up and lose a couple that he,
Sure.
once a year, did he lose one that you never thought he would? Sure, absolutely. But I don't know that he lost about 2 or 3 every year.
And I think people are forgetting with Mark Richt how long he was at the University of Georgia. We've seen it now. College football head coaching positions are probably one of the scariest jobs to get into.
You're not lasting too much with
there's no reason to
the
buy a
fan
house
base
anymore. Because you're moving.
Sure.
You're going around. So he was here in Athens for an extremely long time. Another thing with that Kirby Smart-led football team were the mistakes from the coaching staff. that I think you can definitely point out. And what's Kirby Smart going to do with that? There were some definite mistakes in terms of the offensive play calling at times, defensive play calling at times. They were terrible in the red zone. What's going to happen to the coaching staff? Is everybody going to be back? James Coley could potentially take an offensive coordinator job. That's where his skill set lies. You know, that I think is going to kind of be one of those things where Kirby Smart could differentiate himself from a lot of coaches. Can he go away from Jim Chaney because he didn't like what he saw 1 year and go to a different guy, or is he going to have to stay with him? That's where I think you kind of start to measure Kirby Smart as a head coach with that, and also his recruiting, which we're going to touch on heavily.
Yeah, you know, and I think that people love to bring up the whole Saban was 7-6 in his first year at Alabama. You've probably heard it endlessly. The thing about it is, and this was really the true mark in my opinion, Nick Saban had some turnover in that coaching staff after that season. He flipped some things around.
Yes.
And so, you know, he kind of knew this wasn't the right formula. This wasn't the right experiment. It wasn't all coming together like he wanted. So he had to make some changes. I'm interested to see, though, if Kirby Smart's going to do that, given his lack of experience as a head coach. Nick Saban, at that point, you know, you're talking about a guy who had won a national championship, had been to the NFL, had coached at 3 different programs. I mean, had come up through the ranks, really, and really kind of found his footing as a head coach. Will Kirby follow that same path? I don't know. I think that
that's, I think, one of the biggest questions.
I think it would please a lot of fans to see that. I really do. I know that some turnover would probably buy him a little bit of favor with some guys. Does he think it's too early? Maybe. I don't know. And you know, they inherited this group for the most part. I mean, you know, you brought in a signing class that wasn't as big as you would have wanted, and maybe not even as talented as you would have wanted either. And may have had some different guys if you'd had time to recruit it. So this was an inheritance year. Does he give those guys a year to, hey, get on the recruiting trail, bring your guys in, and then show me results, and then after year 2 we come back and reevaluate? I don't know.
Because Kirby Smart kind of had that learning year as well. So if he's going to fire one of those guys, he's really going to have to look in the mirror and say, well, I've got to do something better next year. That's where I'm kind of lying with that. Is if you do decide to, I guess, kind of blow this thing up or get rid of some type of coaches, that's what a lot of fans want. There's names being called for their heads to come off. Offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, potentially. Everybody's got a name that they want to see gone. But is that the right decision, Dave?
It's scary because you want continuity, and it's like,
sure,
you hear about all these players. Well, this is the 3rd offensive coordinator this guy's had in 3 years, or the 4th guy in 5 years stretch. So I mean, that's what's scary about things. But I think fans want a change. When something's bad right away, they want to change. I mean, did we see anything positive about how the offense was moving around progressing each game?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I mean, there wasn't a single time where I thought, wow, I feel comfortable about this offense. So maybe it is time to change. And I think, I mean, it depends on who's out there also. You can't just get rid of someone and just for getting rid of them. You have to make sure it's the right fit when you come in there.
And I think a lot of people who are going to back Kirby Smart and back the coaching staff that is there right now is going to harp on the fact that they had a freshman quarterback. They had a lot of wide receivers that they did not recruit. They're trying to get their guys in there. Riley Ridley, Isaac Nada catching more passes. Their offensive line, just like Jake said, was patchwork. There's a lot of reasons as to why Kirby Smart would keep Jim Chaney around to lead this offense next year, because guess what? He came in, he tried to do the best that he could with the pieces that he had, give him one more year to kind of get all of his guys in line, and then you can maybe start to judge.
Yeah, and
that's the other side of the argument.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I don't know that people take into account as much, and I really don't know how much it will end up impacting, but let's say you do decide to get rid of Jim Chaney. Well, you know what? He was kind of a package deal with Sam Pittman.
Sure
Those guys are pretty tight. And you saw I thought, some progression from the offensive line over the course of the year. And Pittman is widely regarded as one of the best developers of talent when it comes to the offensive line. Do you fire Chaney and risk losing Sam Pittman? I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if those two guys are married at the hip like that, but that's got to be a big concern as well.
I think so too, Jake. And what we're going to talk about next is some potential offensive linemen to come in and help out Jim Chaney and Sam Pittman. You're listening to DawgDial, presented by UGAsports.com. Hey, Facebook, thank you for staying with us, guys.
We got Roddy in the house over here.
Yeah, Roddy
He's chilling.
here.
Oh, I've heard of him. There he is.
Who's Roddy Nabolsi?
He was jealous of you last week.
We got a comment from JTO. He says, in my opinion, this was the most unimaginative offense I've ever seen since watching this program.
I don't consider that completely true. I think we did a lot more movement around on the line or on the formations, couple of things. But what I did not like, the fact is, as soon as a new player came in, like Sonny Michel came in, or Nick Chubb came in from off the bench, you knew he was going to get the ball right away. That to me was some predictable
run
plays.
pass.
But overall, I think we did some kind of trick plays here and there.
The thing about it is, though, some of it was, do I think it's the most unimaginative thing I've ever watched? No. Do I think that some of the ideas were born of bad imagination?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think that there were some times where they probably should have gone in some different directions.
Yeah, it was unimaginative in the sense that you had the run pass, but then you also had it to where during your run pass you had 3 tight ends on the run, you had 3 tight ends on the pass, and on the run, the second run, you'd have 4 wide receivers in there and a scat back. So it's one of those things where it was almost like he was overthinking the basics.
Sure. Jay Teal says it was unimaginative, minus that end-around throwback to the quarterback inside the 10-yard line.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Jay Teal, never change. We're going to talk about some recruiting, though, here now, guys, in our new segment called Ring the Bell.
Ring-a-ding-ding.
Yes, sir. 3, 2, 1. And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Maharry, joined by my co-hosts Jake Reuse and Dave McMahon of UGAsports.com. We are here at Champy's Chicken in Athens, Georgia, and just to let you guys know, they're trying to raise some unwrapped toys, gift ideas for needy children. So if you have any toys, please bring them by Champy's. They're going to send these guys off to Toys for Tots, make sure that some children get a special Christmas.
Yeah.
So make sure you
Great
stop
cause.
by. Oh, yeah.
And, hey, get you a 40-ounce beer while you're here.
Hey, whoa. Yes, sir. And now we're going to start our new segment called Ring the Bell. We're going to be doing this every week leading up until signing day. And we're going to basically discuss a certain position that we think recruits can come in and make an impact, and who exactly these recruits are. I've got my recruiting czar with me, Jake Reuse, who's going to be really taking all these questions. I'm just going to be feeding them to him. But basically, we're going to start this week with the biggest question mark, and I think one that most fans want to hear about, and that is the offensive line. And, Jake, we had a great question pop up on our Facebook. And what exactly were they saying on that with the offensive line?
We got a great question in here. It was from Sonny Crumpton. And, Sonny, thank you for sending that in. He said, in your opinion, what does the line look like next year? That's a great question.
Yeah. I can say 2 names that I think will be on there.
Sure.
So Dyshawn Sims and Lamont Galliard I think will definitely be on there. Lamont Galliard is very underrated.
Isaiah Wynn's going to have a home, too.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Those 3 guys I think are probably in the mix. Now, I did see somebody on here calling for Isaiah Wynn at left tackle, and I get that. I kind of was a proponent of that going into this year. What I think you should do, and this is just personal opinion based on nothing more than that, I think that a really solid move for Georgia would be to take Dyshawn as your left, Lamont Galliard as your right guard, and then put Isaiah Wynn at your center position. Because to me, that guy is as solid a lineman as you've got. He's extremely smart, but he doesn't have quite the size that the NFL's looking for.
Sure.
So it would be sort of a route that they took with Brandon Capilano these last couple of years. Give him some experience there and let him get ready for the league and give him a shot. Yeah. I think that could also help Jacob Eason. Those are 2 guys that are familiar with each other. Do I know that that's going to happen? I don't, but I could see that playing in. Another guy I think could maybe end up in that center spot, a guy like Chris Barnes. I think that he's a really bright kid. But obviously you want to talk about the recruiting. How are these recruits going to come in and push these guys, maybe crack the lineup and find themselves a home? Obviously, right now you got 4 commits on that offensive line.
Can you name them for our listeners?
I can. I can name them all 4.
Yes.
You've got 2 tackles. That's Andrew Thomas and Deontay Demery.
Both out of the state of Georgia.
All your offensive line commits
sure are.
And you have 2 guards, the Cedar Grove duo of Notori Johnson and Justin Schaefer. Now, those 2 guys I think are Justin's got a little bit of ways to go. I think he's a little bit more raw. Big upside for Justin.
Yeah.
Very big kid, very talented as far as his feet, and has gotten a lot better in the course of the last couple of years. Early on when I saw him, didn't know that he was going to end up being kind of a high-level SEC type player. Now that I've seen him I think he's definitely there, and I think it was a great pickup for Georgia. Notori is easily your most likely commit and prospect, I think, on this group of guys to start next year. I think that he can find himself a home. Does he nudge out Dashawn Sims? Does he nudge out Lamont Galliard? Does he play center? I don't know. Yeah. But I think that he's a guy who's going to find a home in year one. I just think that he's got enough power. He's got enough feet. He runs track. He's a super athletic kid. So I think that of all that group, he's most likely to find a home starting day one. The other two guys, Demery and Thomas, I don't know that you've got a ready-made guy to step in and play tackle on day one. Now, maybe one of them develops over the course of the summer and turns into your right tackle. But I don't know that I'd trust either of them with my left tackle spot just yet. I want to see some more progression from them. I want to see them put some weight on. I want to see them put some good weight on. But, I think that Andrew's a guy who's very smart. He's very well put together. He's got great upside. He's very solid in his technique. Demery's a lot more raw. He's the Schaefer to Andrews Johnson at this point. I think that Demery is a freak. He's a physical freak. You're talking about a kid who's almost on that 6'7" range, right on that 300-pound mark, but still developing his craft. A kid who has a ways to go. Do I think he'll find the field one day? Yeah, I think it's certainly possible. He's a big guy.
And I think if you haven't heard Deontay Demery's story, you need to head over to UGAsports.com and read about that. It's in the archives over there. Just an incredible story about, I guess, moving forward with life and really having to get through a lot of trials and tribulations. So shouts out to Demery on that and that he's able to get through that. Now, Jake, I want to bounce to guys that aren't necessarily on the team or who could never be on the team. These are prospects that Georgia's looking at. There are a couple names out there, and they're the big fish.
Hit me with them.
All right. Well, Isaiah Wilson.
Isaiah Wilson. Oh, boy.
One of the biggest fish of them all.
Probably the biggest fish.
And before you get going with that, Jake, I want to remind our listeners and fans, dog fans, that when you miss on big fish, you got to have a backup.
Yeah, you better have a smaller fish.
Because everybody's going after the big fish.
And when was the last time Georgia went after a big fish from the state of New York?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
I think Troy Stark was our last offensive lineman
It's one
from
of those
New York,
things, Dave, that you've got to look at, and then you've got to have a backup plan. So I'm going to ask you about that, too. But Isaiah Wilson, obviously, the name that everybody's thinking of.
I think Isaiah Wilson is a kid that is coming to Georgia for his official visit December 9th.
Yep.
That's going to be very key for him. One of the most interesting things I think about him is this interplay between his coaching staff and the Georgia coaching staff. I think that that's something to be watching. Now, he's an independent kid. I don't know that that's necessarily going to be a make-or-break thing for him like it would for some kids. Maybe it gives him a little bit more familiarity at Georgia if those guys were to come along, but I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case. Georgia has to convince him, hey, you're day one. You're the guy. We need you. You can start at left tackle, and I really think he could. I think that he's, out of all this group of guys, he's the one guy who could step in there out of 2017 and become your left tackle immediately.
Jake, we're going to have to take a quick break. I do want to touch on a couple more names for our Ring the Bell segment when we come right back, and we're going to dive into a little bit more Georgia football. When we return, you're listening to DawgDial, presented by UGAsports.com. Facebook, we've got some questions here. I also want to touch on these, so we're going to go back. We just run out of time sometimes, guys. So we're going to go back, touch on a couple more prospects, and then we're going to touch on the rest of the offensive line questions that we've gotten in from you guys, like has Ben Cleveland just struggled to adjust to the college game?
Dave McMahon is a legend.
Dave McMahon is a legend.
Jeremy Lawler.
I think Ben Cleveland, the left guard, went to left tackle from Tom Gross. So we're definitely going to touch on that stuff too, guys. It's just sometimes we run out of time. So this week is about the offensive line because that's one of the biggest question marks. So here we go. We got 3, 2, 1. And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Maharry, joined by Jake Roos and Dave McMahon, both co-hosts here of the DawgDial show. And, Jake, last segment we started our first segment of Ring the Bell. We didn't get through it all. That's great. We got to another segment. So we've got a couple more names to talk about on the offensive side of the ball in terms of recruiting. But before we do that, we had some questions coming on the text line. First question from Tom Gross. He says, can Solomon McKinley play tackle, yes or no?
I don't think so. I think he's a little bit too squatty for it. I think he's an excellent build for guard, and with a year of strength and conditioning under his belt, I think that the best is yet to come for Solomon.
And speaking of other linemen, freshman linemen, Brian Edwards wrote in. He said, has Ben Cleveland just struggled to adjust to the college game? This is a guy with huge upside. I mean, he looked like a man when he was in 10th grade.
Sure. And I do think he struggled with it. You don't have to coach a kid like that when you're playing in Toccoa.
Correct.
You know, you're playing some teams, and all you say is, hey, buddy, go out there and push that kid over. And that's all the coaching he requires because he's strong enough and big enough to do that. When you're going up against Montravius Adams, it's a little bit different story.
Yeah, Montravius Adams.
So I think that I think Ben has struggled with that somewhat. As somebody put on here about finding the killer instinct, I think that's a very big key for Ben. He's a soft kid in terms of a heart. He's a sweet guy. You know, not necessarily just the wild man that some of these guys are. No bloodlust to him, really.
Yes.
But if you can bring it out of him, hey, that kid's. I mean, he's got, like you said, all the potential in the world. And if I would trust anyone to bring it out of a huge guy, it'd be Sam Pittman.
And before we get to the other recruits on the offensive side of the ball, I want to talk to Dave right quick. Dave, we got a question in from Tom Gross as well. He said he thinks Ben Cleveland to left guard, Wynn to left tackle. Does that make sense to you, sir?
I mean, Wynn is still. I mean, he's still undersized.
Jake just made a very valid
point
points for center.
So yeah, I think. I mean, if you have him at center, that's great because like the cohesion between him and the quarterback. But that leaves the left tackle bad. If you move him to left tackle, that leaves the center as the not. The problem is, can we have two Isaiah Wynns? Can we have one a little bit bigger play left? I don't think that could happen. But
you could use 5 of them.
Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
tell you that.
I wish he could gain another 10 to 15 pounds. I mean, he could probably do my method. I could gain 10 to 15 pounds just like that. But Isaiah Wynn,
mayonnaise sandwiches.
I need Isaiah Wynn to do that. I think, but I think, can he do it? Yes. Is it the best idea? I'm still hesitant about that, just because. I mean, I like that. I think in the beginning of the year it should be a good move, because in the beginning of the year it's going to be a whole new offensive line, and it's going to need to take time. And having a smart guy like Isaiah Wynn at left tackle might benefit.
And Dave, let's say that Isaiah Wynn does stay inside. That brings me to my next question with Jake. There's a couple more guys that could potentially move on to the outside, and there's a name that kind of popped up recently that we haven't quite heard about too much. What's his name?
Would that be DeMarcus Hayes?
Yes,
DeMarcus
indeed.
Hayes, yes. JUCO tackle, 2017 guy, in that 6'6", 310 area. So
Sam Pittman approved.
All the size, yes, absolutely, everything you need there. Had a chance to talk with DeMarcus, and seems like a very sharp kid. I will say that first off, but says that Louisville, Miss State, and Georgia are kind of the three that are in the biggest contact with him at this point, have been most consistent. Miss State being the most consistent, I think, at this point. He's a kid from Mississippi originally, so that plays in the favor of the Miss State Bulldogs. But I think that Georgia has the biggest need of probably anybody I can think of.
In the country.
Sure.
Yeah.
And, he mentioned this idea that they're going to need a guy right away, and they've made no qualms about it to him. They've told him, hey, you come here, you're in the mix day one for playing time. That's super appealing to anybody when you can sell that, especially a JUCO guy. He's got 3 years to play, too. Still got the redshirt year that he could take if he needed to, and maybe grow a little bit or
hate
learn
to see
technique.
that, though.
But you don't need him to do that. You need him to come in and play 2 years and go to the NFL and go first round in the NFL draft. But DeMarcus is a kid that really, I think, Georgia fans have to watch closely. He'll be in December 9th for his official visit as well. It's going to be a huge weekend for Georgia in general, but he's the kid primarily that I think you got to watch for right now.
We've got one more name on the offensive line, then we've got a special surprise visitor that I want to speak on as well. But there's a guy out of the state of Texas, Walker Little.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on him?
Well, there's not much little about him. I will say that first off. But Walker is a kid. He gave him an official visit during the Auburn game. Hey, what a great time to catch a game in Sanford Stadium. Probably the only time to do it this year. But I don't think he's getting out of the state. I don't think he's coming to the SEC. I don't think that Georgia's going to end up being a huge factor down the road. Maybe Sam Pittman gets on the road, over the course of the next week or so, and gets in the kid's ear and changes some things. At this moment, I think it's going to be Stanford, or I don't think he's leaving. I think that Tom Herman's probably going to make him a huge target. But David Shaw and those Stanford Cardinal have already done so. So I think he's got two great options in mind already. It's going to be hard for Georgia to kind of catch up in that regard.
And, Jake, we've got a minute 30 left. I want to touch on a guy that just recently decommitted that popped up on Georgia's radar out of the blue right after the Georgia Tech game. It was like one of those things where the recruiting gods knew that Georgia Bulldog fans needed some good news. And just so happens Georgia has that now. And it has an official visitor come in that could potentially pay huge dividends down the road.
Yeah, and I thought you were just going to ask me about offensive linemen. Obviously,
Correct.
This guy's not. Outside linebacker Josh Kando,
Yes.
A 5-star guy, one of the top 30 players in America, and really plays like it. I mean, just
he's
a
unbelievable.
lights-out guy. 6'6", 240, tremendous build. Looks like Lorenzo Carter coming out of high school. I mean, just all the size of the world you need. I'm not writing Georgia off totally. Penn State and Florida State are probably the odds-on favorites, I would say, at this point. I think they've got a very, very good shot of landing him. But Georgia has a big ace in the hole, and that's Robert Beal.
Yep.
The two of them spent the last year playing together at IMG, and I think that could end up benefiting Georgia in the long run in a big way. They're going to visit together, so he's going to have Beal in his ear the whole time. They're going to be getting the full experience, getting all the love. I'm keeping an eye on Kane, though. I'm not writing it off just yet.
And I think one of the biggest things for Georgia fans to realize, Robert Beal is not that big of a recruiter. He just kind of stays to himself. So he's kind of reaching out of the box with this one in the sense that I think he really likes Josh a lot, and I think he kind of wants to play with him in college. You don't hear Robert Beal being the Richard LeCounte of his class. He's just kind of steady, easy, he's backed off. He just wants to play football. So with him actually going out and recruiting somebody to the University of Georgia, a big-name prospect like that, it shows good things for Georgia moving forward. Guys, we're going to take a quick break. We're coming right back. You're listening to DawgDial, presented by UGAsports.com.
What do we have left?
We got a 7 and a 5, right?
Okay. I think that's all right.
I thought we just had a 5 left. We've done a 7, 12, 7, 7.
You got 2 7?
Oh, okay.
Do we just have the 5 left? You did 2.
We did the first 7.
I should have been paying attention.
Don't worry, our producer's over here just getting lambasted, so we can't. We
No,
don't
yeah,
know
we just-
exactly where we're at in the show.
We did the 12, then we did the 7 with the ring the bell, then we added 0 to this one.
That's right.
So
That's
we have
right.
the 5 left. Yep.
All right.
Okay.
I would mention the children's thing again. Mention emails.
Oh, yeah.
Twitter.
Let's take a couple of quick questions.
and the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
We got some that we couldn't fit in there in that last segment. Tony Gray, do you think he could commit to UGA? I think Tony is actually a kid that I would definitely keep eyes on. He's visited, has been pretty consistent that he loves Georgia, grew up a fan of them. I think that he's a guy that I could consider as a backup plan.
Do you remember how I was just telling you when you go after big fish, sometimes you don't land them?
Tony
Gray is
And Tony Gray, don't get me wrong.
Oh, he's a big fish,
not
too.
a big fish. Right, exactly. He's not a big fish.
correct. Yeah, I think that Tony Gray's sitting right there, so if they miss out on Isaiah Wilson, Walker Little, those guys, you've got a guy that could come in and you put a little bit of weight on him, you don't know what could happen.
Cheryl and Leroy Brooks said, do you think Jake Fromm will push Eason at quarterback next season?
There's a lot of discussion on that.
I do.
I think if anything, he might not. I don't think he's going to start, but competition breeds winners.
I'm going to tell you right now, and I firmly believe this. I think that Jake Fromm, coming in as a freshman, is going to provide more competition to Jacob Eason than Bryce Ramsey or Grayson Lambert did this year.
100%, yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing Georgia fans should be happy about, and the fact that he's coming in and every day is going to be a competition for Jacob Eason to keep his job. But the two guys that Georgia had on campus just weren't as talented as Eason. Fromm is as talented as Eason, so it's going to be one of those things where he's going to have to push him.
Yep. And one more, Matt Garman said Josh Fields would be the name we want to hear about. I think you're probably talking about Justin Fields
Yes.
of Harrison.
Not the former baseball pitcher.
I was wondering,
Keep a real close eye on Justin Fields. I got a feeling. I'm just saying. I got a
kind of like
feeling.
more than a feeling, like when you're inside the UGA stadium and they play that song. And,
when they're not playing Journey.
Nothing like more than a feeling.
all right.
All right. Let's
All right,
wrap it
guys,
up.
We're going to wrap it up here.
By the way, we are going to give away the gift card today, as we always do, to Champies for the best question of the day. So if you got a couple last ones to send us in, that would be great. We're going to mention this in our promo. But if you guys come by Champies, bring an unwrapped toy for children.
Yeah, please do, guys.
Toys for Tots. It's going to be going to a great cause. Bring some more to somebody's holiday season, and let's get back to those who don't have as much as all of us.
And when you come in, make sure you ask for Josh or Amy. They're the owners of Champions Chicken here. They'll sit down. They'll talk Georgia football with you. And they just love to have you here. And like Jake said, bring in those unwrapped toys so that somebody can have a good Christmas.
All right.
That's what the season's all
So
about.
you got the 5-minute segment to send in your questions if you want the gift card. The best question will win. It may be one of the earliers. Who knows? We'll just see. We're just playing.
All right, guys, and 3, 2, 1. And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Maharry, joined by my co-hosts Jake Roos and Dave McMahon of UGAsports.com. And our longtime listeners know that music indicates that this is indeed the final segment of this week's show. Guys, it's been a pleasure working with you. Jake's Twitter handle is @RoosRecruiting. I'm @PMaharry, and Dave is @Dave_Mick_Stats. The show's Twitter handle is @DAWGDIAL, and we're at Champy's Chicken in Athens on Baxter Street. And if you didn't hear us in the beginning of the show, make sure you come stop by, see Josh and Amy Collins over here at Champy's Chicken, and bring a unwrapped toy to put underneath the Christmas tree. They're going to be sending them off to Toys for Tots for a great cause, and that's what the season's all about, Dave.
I agree 100%. And I like to say, I enjoy hanging out with you two tremendously. But next week I will not be here.
Where are you headed, Dave?
I am headed to New York. Maybe talk to Isaiah Wilson. No, I'm not. I'm not going to talk to Isaiah Wilson when there.
Yeah.
Maybe if he's around, I'll be at the Waldorf Astoria, and
Nice.
It is the College Football Hall of Fame's their induction, and the National Football Foundation, which is the cap I am wearing right now, and I wear quite often. They had announced the Campbell Award, but there'll be a lot of big-time people being inducted in the Hall of Fame. People like Rod Woodson's going to be there. Randall Cunningham is going to be there. Burt Jones from LSU. Rod Woodson. But for Georgia fans, none other than Georgia's own Scott Warner is there. Warner, the big-time returner, big-time defensive back, had 13 career interceptions, had big plays against Clemson. Loves to spin the ball when he scores touchdowns. Big play after big play. His nephew currently plays for the team, so I'm looking forward to seeing Charlie Warner. The bad part about the Hall of Fame is that I have to wear a tux, and I'm always not a big time comfortable wearing a tux, but it is a lot of fun, and the people from the National Football Foundation and the College Football Hall of Fame do a great job. And every year it's been in the at the Waldorf, and I've been volunteering, working for them the last 3 or 4 years, and it's a tremendous event.
Well, Dave, it sounds like you're going to be having a great time. We're going to try to hold down the show for you here. Guys, before we get done, though, the season's wrapped up. What were your final thoughts on the season? Jake, you got 30 seconds.
Disappointing is the first word that comes to mind. I think that you wanted to see Kirby Smart come out here for all the perceived talent deficiencies or whatever you want to say about this team. You wanted to see him patch things together, make something happen. I think that the seat is not hot yet, but it's going to get hot if next year doesn't go a lot better.
Dave?
I think when we've talked about it quite a bit in this show, it's inconsistency. Georgia's not had the complete game. Georgia's not. Sometimes the offense looks good. Sometimes even in the offense, sometimes the running looks good. Sometimes the passing looks good, and sometimes the opposite happens. But sometimes when the offense looks bad, the defense looks good, and other way around. Special teams for the most part has not looked good overall, and sometimes the coaching decisions look overall. So many different parts need to improve, and I think if Georgia improves the most on defensive line, I think all the positions have improved throughout the year, except I think the offensive line is going to be starting from scratch again next year. If they do well on the offensive line, I think they could improve for next year, but that's always a big if.
I think one of the biggest things moving forward, guys, is now this is Kirby Smart's season. It's recruiting season. It's what everybody talked about when he first got to Georgia. Can he close out the year with some high-profile names to finish off the list for 2017? If he's able to do that, bring those guys in, start getting his own kids in, there's no telling what he could do with this program. Now, if he kind of fails with the big fish, he doesn't land a true offensive tackle, that's where you really start to wonder if this program's headed in the right direction. I think that's the bottom line. You got to nail down the recruiting. This season, these next 2 months are critical to Kirby Smart's job.
Absolutely. In my mind, there's no two bigger things that factor into the future of this coaching staff and the longevity of their stay at Georgia than how they recruit this offseason and the player development that you see this offseason.
I think both of those have to be key, and I think you've got to get some guys in that can help you on that offensive line. Then also you got a couple more positions that might be opening up. You've got to be able to fill those out. And, guys, we're going to be able to talk about it this entire offseason right here at DawgDial. Don't go anywhere else. This is the place to be. Jake, thanks for being on the show with us, my man. Dave, as always, have fun.
I'll have fun next week, but the only thing I'm missing is the Champions Chicken. I'm mixing the Champions Chicken. That's what I'm going to be missing.
Don't make me hang out with Paul by myself.
Oh, yeah, it's happening. It's happening.
Maybe we'll get Roddy to come back.
Thanks again to Josh Collins and Amy Collins here at Champions Chicken, John Roller, executive producer, and UGA Sports for having us. Thank you for so much, guys, for listening in, to our listeners and our fans. You've been listening to DawgDial, presented by UGASports.com.
All right, Facebook, thank you so much for tuning in. We have to give away a gift card. And
I'll tell you who I like.
All right,
and
let's go with Dave's pick.
Okay, yeah. I like Mitch Davis just because, I thought he was going to be the real Mitch Davis. And he's made some good points throughout the
I thought so, too.
And
Mitch has had some good ones. So, Mitch, congratulations.
Mitch
Davis, come by Champy's Chicken. You got a gift certificate waiting on you, courtesy of Champy's and DawgDial. Swing by. Josh and Amy are here. You can touch base with them. We'll give them your name. All you got to do, pull it up on your phone. Hey, I'm the guy from the DawgDial. They'll hook you up.
Oh, and then Mitch asked this question, too. We didn't even see this. He said, who's the most underrated recruit for this signing class, and who is the one that could start right away?
I think that we already touched on who I think would start right away, and that's Notori Johnson. The most underrated guy, I believe, maybe Devontae Wyatt. I think that he's a kid who can really, really move, especially for his size, man. He's a freak when it comes to that. Plays a little bit of running back. He could go along with that defensive tackle that he does. And I love it because personally, you don't have a lot of those guys that play both of those ways. So he knows the tendencies of these guys. How are they going to go, what their eye movements mean, those sorts of things.
You mentioned a freak. You mentioned a guy who played both fullbackish and defensive tackle. There's a guy in the early 2000s that played a little bit like that. I believe he went by the name David Pollock, who was kind of freakish and stuff like that. Now, we're not comparing those two together, but
there's some Charles Grant that this guy's.
He was an underrated recruit. Yeah, Charles Grant also a couple years earlier than that did some played both offensively and defensively from the running back with a big size as well. They had a monster game against Kentucky that one big year and stuff like that.
Well, guys, we're going to sign off. Mitch Davis, again, you won. He's still asking questions. He's still asking questions. Come up to Champions.
Yeah, hey, Mitch, come up here next Tuesday.
Yeah, man.
Have a beer with us.
And after the show, we'll talk all the questions.
We'll have a great time. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure you share our broadcast with your other fans or other friends who are Georgia fans.
Send all your likes in. Like this thing up.
Make sure to come by Champions. Drop off your unwrapped toys. They'll give them a good home.
Yes. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good one.